Hi there. In the last lecture, we chatted a little bit about generating our application and then actually generated our application called blog. And then we added it to our settings file and then actually ran our Django server. And we noticed we now have our Django server running, which is really cool. And we logged into the backend where we saw we had our users and our groups. Now, what I would like to do is I would actually like to add our posts to the back-end content management system and then somehow pull those posts through to the front end. So this is really nice because this is a bit of a parallel to WordPress where you can create posts, except the difference being that we have complete control over what we create. So the way that we would create posts, obviously, because we are linking to the content management system on the back end, and then we want to link to something on the front end, we need a database model to be the glue between the two. So anything we create in the database model in terms of structure needs to remain needs to stay there throughout. So when we hit save, we want it to save to the database so that it remains constant. So what is really cool about that is that we can actually define exactly what we want to have in our post. So let's do that. Let's go to our models.py file, and I'm going to delete this first line here because I don't want it. All I'm really interested in is the Django DB models class or library. This is helpful because it pulls in everything model related into this file, which is really nice because I want to use some stuff from the models. So what we're now going to do is we're now going to create a Django class, and then in the same way that we did in our previous lectures, when we added attributes to our classes. So in our to-dos app, we added it as complete Boolean attribute and a title string attribute. We can now add attributes to our post class. So I'm going to create a post class. So let's go class and then post, open close brackets and colon. And now we can add our attributes to our class. Now this is really nice because what Django does is it will allow you to create a class, and then you can create a migration on this class and then run that migration, and it will map this class to the database. And what you'll notice is once we've created this and we go back to our admin area, these fields or attributes will be created, and we can fill those in every single time we create a post. So that is really, really helpful. Before we actually create our class, I want to add one more library. So this is how we add multiple libraries. So I'm going to select the section of Django that I want to pull in the library from. So it is from the Django base library, and then there is a special library, sub-library in that called utils. And then from that, I want to import the time zone class. So the reason that I'm importing the time zone class is because we are working with posts. I would like to set a publish date to our posts. And I don't want to have to worry about coding something like date and time manually. I would rather let Django handle this. So that is where this utility function comes in, and other utility functions come in really, really handy. Cool. Let us now create our class. So what I would like to do is I would like to create a post as a child class of the base model class, which sits in Django, which will then give us access to everything that that model class has. Now, we spoke briefly about child classes. We didn't really discuss any examples earlier on in the previous section, but I will be covering them briefly now, and hopefully they'll make a little bit more sense to you. So the way that you create a reference to a parent class within a child class is you actually have to call that class as in the parameters of the child class. So we need to go to look in the models library, and there is a class in the models library called called model, and this is now going to tell Django that we want the post class to be a child of the base model class. Now this is really useful because it gives us access to everything that the base model class has, which you will see now. So the first thing that I would like to do is I would actually like to create an author for this post. So the way that we can create an author is by just creating the attribute called author and then saying author is equal to something. Now I want to use something called a foreign key. So a foreign key is something that is built into the base model class of Django. So I can simply just call foreign key here, and Django will know what I'm talking about. So when I say foreign key, I mean a referencing key to another table. So the other table that I'm talking about is this users table, or this users application, because I want to link my post author to an actual user. So if we had to go into my admin account now, you would see that my user has got an ID of 1. Now, while I was testing this earlier, I created another user ID just so that you could see what I'm talking about. And what you will notice is if I create another user ID after this, this number will now increment. But at the same time, this will never change. So if I created a first user, his user ID or her user ID would be 1. The second user that I created, user ID, would be 2. Even if I delete that user, that ID will be the only user ID that is ever 2. So now if I create a third user, even though the second user has been deleted, that 2 will stay constant, and this will now increment to 3. So there we go, user 3. So this is the ID that I want to pull in, and this is what is the foreign key. If you are not sure what the foreign key is for a specific thing, go into that model in the backend or admin area, and you'll be able to see it as an identifier here. So user ID 3. Cool. So in here, what I would like to do is I would like to refer to that somehow. So this is actually a function, and then I'm going to call, let's see what library uses from. It's from the auth library. I'm sure you can see that. The auth library, and then it's just the user. So the user class. So we want to go auth dot user. And now we should have a user created. Now, what you will notice as well is that if we suddenly had to refresh our, I think we're already getting an error there. Name model isn't defined. It's modules. There we go, because we imported it from modules. Okay, lovely. Django is really good with that. If we make a mistake, the console will tell us very quickly. So if we now had to refresh this, you will still notice that we don't have any posts here. Why not? Well, the reason for that is that we have not yet created any migration. So we have not mapped this model to the database at all. So I think as an exercise, we'll do that quickly, and then we will create the rest of our post, and then we will map those to the database as well after that. So we've already got something to work with here, so this is great. I don't think we need anything else other than this to create our model. So let's run it and then let's see what happens. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to Control C to just cancel that server for now. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create that migration. So the way that we do that, as we do with any of the shell commands, is we say Python manage.py, and then we run a function that we've never seen before, which is make migrations. And this doesn't actually do the migration, but it makes a migration file and sets up the migration so that we can do the migration if we want to. And if you don't pass a parameter into here, it'll assume that you want to migrate everything on the site. We don't, because we have already migrated our users and some of our base things, so I would like to keep this as specific as possible. As a rule of thumb, you should try to keep this as specific as possible as well. So I want to specifically migrate the blog application. So if I hit return now, it's going to create our blog migration. So if we go back into blogs and we go into migrations, you'll see it's added a new file here. And it's actually telling the Django database what to create. We want to create an ID, which it does by default, which is our auto incremented ID. And we want to create an author, which is a foreign key. So this will now get mapped to our database. We don't have to touch this file at all. This is purely for Django to have a look at and to create the database connection. So now that we've actually made some sort of provision for the migration, we can actually now go and make the migration. And this is a command that you should recognize. If I go back, you should, no, it's not back, so that's, and this command is just migrate. And again, I want to now pass the name of my app into this migrate. So here it's making, make migrations is making provision for the migration, and then the migrate command is actually creating the migration. So if I hit enter here, it is actually performing the migrations, running the migrations. So now if we go back to the admin area of our site, this migration has been created. So if we refresh our page, oopsie, we need to first run our server again. No errors. If we refresh this page, we will not see anything. Yes, sorry. So now if we had to look in a database client, we would see that that migration has been created, but we haven't linked it up to the admin area yet. Now I know at this stage it might seem a bit tedious to have to constantly link everything, but what you'll see now is that it is really quite a simple process to link up our model to the admin area. And basically all we do to link it up to the admin area is we just keep that admin in there, and then what we want to do is we just want to pull our posts model into this. So we say from dot models import post, and now it's pulling in our post from the models. Lovely. So now we have access to our post class. Then all we want to do is we just need to register that model in the admin area. So we do that by saying admin.site, which is an attribute, and then we have to call the function, which is register. Cool. And what you just need to remember about this is that the Django admin area is not something that is set up default by Django. You actually have to set up the Django area yourself. So we've done that now. We've set up that admin area. So if you want Django to function as a content management system, as I did mention before, this is how you would do it. So I'm passing the post class into this register function, and now it is creating or giving the admin area access to this post class. So we can have models sitting within our application that you can't see in the admin area. Sometimes this is useful for various things. Still nothing. Let us run our server again. Sometimes you need to reset your Django server for these changes to take effect. Still nothing. I am a little bit confused about this. I think the final thing, admin.site.register, Django.contribute.admin, from models.import. Let's remove the dot there. That is still not. Ah, there we go. Sorry. I'm sitting in the authorization section and not the main section. So now you can see that we have our posts here. and we can create a new post. This is really, really cool. So we now have access to our blog application and then our posts model. If we go into our post model and we add a new post, you can now see that we have access to our author, and we can choose which user we want as our author. And when we select this, it will pre-select that foreign key field that we spoke about. You don't really have to worry about that as a Django administrator, because all you see is the name of the admin.